fact is that I have met with Xi Jinping more than any other world leader has. I've had over 68 hours of private meetings, just he and I, with simultaneous interpreters. I spent a lot of time with Xi Jinping when I was vice president and subsequent to that. And he once asked me in the Tibetan Plateau, could I define America for him? And I mean it sincerely, not a joke. I said, yes, one word, possibilities. I've allegedly met more face-to-face with Xi Jinping than any world leader has. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping.
Joining me now, Stephen Mosher, president of the Population Research Institute. Stephen, the president has met with Xi Jinping a lot, and he loves to tell us about that. The question is why?
Well, if I were a cynic, I would say, Jesse, that all these backroom deals take a long time to negotiate, and you need to have one-on-one meetings because you don't want anyone else knowing about them except the other members of the Biden crime family. But I hate to be that cynical about the occupant of the Oval Office, but he's given us little reason to be otherwise. And I have to believe that this, not only is he displaying weakness internationally, which is why we have wars breaking out everywhere. He's a weak person in terms of his own character. A lifetime in government, a lifetime on the take, a lifetime of grifting. The man has no principles whatsoever other than to check his bank account balance 3 times a day.
Speaking of the bank account balance, we now, courtesy of the House Oversight Committee, have more payments to Joe Biden. Looks very clearly like laundered Chinese money. I think the average American, Stephen, would acknowledge that Joe Biden is a little corrupt, maybe corrupt. I'm talking about the normal American, but I don't think people fully grasp the fact that the president of the United States of America is very likely compromised by China to the point where he's not allowed to make decisions on behalf of only our country.
Yeah, I do think he is compromised. I think he's the Manchurian candidate. Joe Biden has never been a serious person. I was on the commission, the presidential commission that set up Radio Free Asia back in the 90s. We met with the then chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Joe Biden, and we talked about setting up the radio, and he was all in favor of it publicly, and then privately, the members he appointed to the commission tried to undermine the effort. So there you had the private, public differential of a classic politician saying one thing in public, talking out of one side of his mouth in public, the other side of his mouth in private. Then we told him, he said, how much is it going to cost? And we said, well, about $25 million. Remember, this was the 1990s when a dollar was still worth something. And he said, oh, that's nothing. We pay no attention to anything to the right of the comma. What comma is he talking about? Well, I think the comma between 1 billion and 999 million. So that's how he considers our public money to be, just money he can give away to people, make them happy. He's much more aware of the private money he's got coming in and much more responsive to people who give him those payments. And, China's the big player here. China's the 800-pound gorilla. China is the key player, the driving force behind the axis of evil that includes Russia and Iran. And I think China is the source of most of the funding of the Biden family over the last 15, 20 years or so.
Stephen, speaking of China, I'm glad you brought up the 800-pound gorilla. The Pentagon, I don't know that we can trust anything put out of the Pentagon anymore, but they're putting out reports saying China is concerned with their military readiness. I am constantly concerned about a nation with a budget that size. How capable are they? Are they now officially a near peer? What is China militarily?
Okay, well, I'm talking to you as someone who is an officer in the U.S. Navy at the tail end of the Vietnam War. I've transited the Taiwan Straits with the 7th Fleet and a destroyer many times. And I will tell you that 25 years ago, we could have handily disposed of the People's Liberation Army Air Force, the People's Liberation Army Navy, with the assets we have in the Far East. That is no longer true. The People's Liberation Army, Navy, and Air Force is designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to take out American ships and planes and ground forces. That's why they've stolen all of the military technology they can from us. That's why they reverse engineered The rest of it, their planes look like our F-35 fighters. Their tanks look like our tanks. And their ships, of course, are modeled after our ships. When you design a Navy for that purpose and an Air Force for that purpose, you have to be asking yourself as an American, what does it mean? It's pretty obvious what it means. It means that they're preparing for war with the United States. And this business about worrying about their military readiness, I suppose if Xi Jinping, who is a paranoid megalomaniac, which is what communist dictators always wind up being at the end of their life, like Mao Zedong, was a mass murderer from the beginning, but basically became increasingly paranoid as he got older. He has now cashiered about a third of the Central Military Commission. He's replaced many of the generals in the Strategic Missile Force and in other key places in the PLA. And I think he's doing it for one reason. He's trying to put people not only who are loyal to him, so they will obey his commands, he's also trying to put people in place who are warfighters. They will carry out an order to attack Taiwan, take Taiwan. And make no mistake about it, the end game is not to take back Taiwan. That is just the first step on the road to Guam, Hawaii, and the west coast of the United States. China has global ambitions.
Okay, that's awfully ambitious. I'm not surprised, right? He's a commie piece of trash, but eyes on Guam, eyes on Hawaii. Okay, maybe they have a military force that can stop us from trying to stop them to take Taiwan, but that's an offensive military you're describing there. That's a whole different ballgame. Are they developing an offensive military?
Well, right now they have the largest flotilla in the Middle East. They have 6 ships of the People's Liberation Army Navy. Oddly enough, it's called the PLN Navy. Right off the Gulf of Aden. And they also have a naval base, something we don't have in Djibouti at the entrance to the Red Sea. They have a naval base in Djibouti capable of having a carrier, one of their carriers, tie up. So yeah, they are developing a Navy capable of operating not just in China's immediate waters, in the South China Sea and the East China Sea. They're also capable of operating now in the Indian Ocean, the Pacific, and the Atlantic as well. And look, we have to remember that when the Soviet Union fell back in 1991, we know that Deng Xiaoping met with the senior leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. Deng was then the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, and he said this. He said, the old Cold War is over. The Soviet Union has lost. It's been dissolved. America won. The new Cold War is now beginning, and we're going to win this one. They've been at war with us in a serious way since 1991, trying to undermine us around the world in every way they can. And what we see in the Middle East now, of course, is another proxy war encouraged by China itself, operating through Iran, that they hope to use to deplete American munitions and to disperse American forces so that when they strike against Taiwan, we won't have the capability to respond effectively. That's what's going on.
So you're anticipating a strike against Taiwan. When?
Well, I think that if Xi Jinping has any sense, he will see how divided America is right now, how the woke military is losing its operational readiness from day to day, how the military assets are being transferred to the Eastern Mediterranean in support of Israel, quite rightly. And he will say that his time to strike is before November of next year with the presidential election. So I think this now is his moment, his opportunity to move against Taiwan. You have a weak president, a compromised president. You have a president who's easily distracted, if he can focus at all, for goodness sake. And we have conflict within the upper reaches of the Biden administration. I don't know who's in charge, but obviously President Biden's not in charge, because when asked about the defense of Taiwan, he has said 3 times, we will defend Taiwan, only to have some unnamed, anonymous senior official, probably Anthony Blinken, come out, or Tony Sullivan, come out and say, no, that's not our policy. Our policy is strategic ambiguity. We're not going to tell the Chinese Communist Party whether we're going to defend Taiwan or not, and that will help to deter them. Of course, that's nonsense. But what message does that send to Beijing? It sends a message of confusion and weakness. It encourages them to think that maybe we won't defend Taiwan if it's attacked. And the other thing to say here is that we are supposed to be shipping massive amounts of anti-ship missiles and anti-air missiles to Taiwan. We're not doing it right now because those assets are going to the Middle East. They're going to Ukraine. And so we've delayed our reinforcement of the Taiwan military to try to put out these other fires. Again, another signal of weakness, another encouragement of Beijing to act now before a new president comes into office in 2025.
Yeah. Stephen, that was awesome. Come back and join us soon, please. Thank you.
Happy to.